Hey guys, thanks for tuning back into the channel. I just wanted to go through a quick tutorial on one of our recent projects we went through. We had just done some custom walnut shaker cabinets. If for the viewers out there that don't know, a shaker cabinet, all it is just one of the most basic type cabinet faces that you can come up with, and it's really just all built on 5 pieces, just 3 different types. So you have your stiles, which are pretty much just the side pieces that go up on the left and right hand side. And then you've got the rails that actually connect in the middle on the top and the bottom of the cabinet. And then the last piece is pretty much just a finished piece of plywood. In this case, we just stained it. It's just a Baltic Birch Plywood, just 1/4 inch. And what we did was just stain it the darkest walnut color that we could find to be able to match the actual hard walnut, the actual solid walnut pieces around the sides. So on the sides, and where this is already built, I went ahead and used my test piece to be able to illustrate the part on what we're showing here. So on the inside of all this, it's completely recessed for this panel here. And what we did was we cut a 3/8 inch groove all the way down for everything to be able to fit all into the into this groove of the cabinet to be able to make it look seamless. And from the end of the piece here that you can't see, I'll zoom in here in a second, is it goes all the way through to the top. So you see the groove continuous from the bottom all the way out the top. And then these top rail pieces actually have tenons that are 3/8 inch long that go into the sides here to connect. There's no screws or anything that's connected. All it is just glue that ties that in. Now we have these cut at, to where they're snug going in. There's not, they're able to hold their own within it, but I like to be able to have it at least to be able to pull apart, not, too tight in the joint, because you might get some kind of cracking on the sides. And, you definitely don't want that, especially if it's done outside of the shop once you've delivered it to the customer. So all I used in this was a table saw, and to be able to cut all of these rails. For the plywood, I just went ahead and just used a utility knife to be able to cut it out just out of a larger sheet. But so for the sizing on the cabinet we have here, it was a custom cabinet, so I went and done a lot of digging and stuff to figure out what a uniform size is for a cabinet. And I really think that the size I chose is really just kind of best suited for the cabinet that I built. So it's 24 inches wide, so I just kind of wanted to make sure that it was scaled to where the sides looked pretty equivalent to like the width of it. So if you went any wider, I went with 2 inches for my rails and my stiles. So if you went any wider than that, I would feel like you would probably want to go up to like 2.5 inches wide, just to be able to make sure that these rails and stiles look beefy in comparison to the size of whatever you're going to actually put the doors on. So in this case, I went with 2 inches wide, 1/4 inch finished Baltic Birch Plywood, and then 3/4 inch thickness on the rails and the stiles. So from there, I'm not going to include all just the squaring up pieces, but whatever it takes to get it to that equivalent size. I mean, what I did, it was best for me to run everything through exactly the same to make sure, not have to go through and do any kind of recuts or planing or anything like that down. I just wanted everything to be absolutely perfectly straight and ran through all at the same time, so I didn't have to go back and repeat anything. So, now that we've went over that, we'll go ahead and get started on, how we started first. So what we're going to do first is we're going to cut our groove out for the recessed panel is going to set in. This is what the actual rail piece looks like. So in my case, I don't have any kind of dado stack or anything. So that's typically what you would do, is you would get some kind of dado stack for a table saw or a smaller router bit set up to be able to go through and cut out this groove. And with what I did, I just did it the same way I did all the other pieces. I ran all those pieces through at the same time, but I started off, I went ahead and cut an extra piece that I was going to have this groove on, just to run through and get all my sizing and stuff right. You can see the multiple cuts here, but pretty much once you get that dialed in, you're just going to get one cut dead center all the way down the middle. And from there, that's where you're going to do your micro adjustments to be able to move a little bit bigger until it fits over the piece of 1/4 inch plywood. So really, you're going to line up the first cut, take all the pieces straight through. It doesn't matter. You can line up what pieces that you want to at this point, but the orientation is really not going to matter at this stage. But once you start moving around and start sliding that over, you're going to get off slightly. Take a lot of extra time, but in my case, I just wanted to be able to get a straight line down the middle. If I was a 1/16 of an inch inside or outside, that really didn't matter to me at this point, because I was only going to be taking maximum 3 passes at this, and you know, it was really going to be a solid 2 passes to get the width that I was wanting. So once you go through and make the first pass on all the pieces dead center, then you make your micro adjustment and run your test piece through, see where you're at, and then at that point, if you're still not there where the blade is at, you want to go ahead and cut, run all your pieces through, and then at that point you want to start making sure when you're stacking your stock, you want to keep everything stacked in the orientation that you're picking it up, because it's real easy to get mixed up if you're just barely off. And the problem with that is if you do have a piece upside down, or you cut one, and then when you go to make your micro adjustment, if you pick up from the wrong end or run it through a different angle, you know, run it through a different end first than you did the first time, then it could get you out of whack for when you get down to the last step to actually assemble it. So let's go ahead and look how we're going to go through that part. So right here, we're just going to make sure our blade's square to the table. Then going in and raising it, just making sure we're right at that 3/8 of an inch. Now we're going to go ahead and push our fence over, go ahead and get it sized up to be exactly right in the middle of the 3/4 inch piece of rails and stiles. Once you run all your pieces through once on one side, you go ahead and make your micro adjustment about the width of the blade, run the test piece through once, and then go ahead and do your test fit. And you want it to be snug but not too tight to where it's putting pressure on the outside of the groove. Go ahead and lay out the stiles with the grooves facing in. You will most likely need to flip one of the stiles to ensure the grooves match up. You want them matching the image in the below section. Now lay out the rail pieces, ensuring the grooves match up with the stiles. Label the rails and stiles top and bottom. For the rail tenons length, set the blade to 3/8 inches from the fence to the opposite side of the blade. The blade height for the width needs to be about 1/16 of an inch lower than the height of the beginning of the groove opening. Using a miter gauge, run your test piece through in small passes, starting with the rail flush to the fence with the side labeled bottom facing down. Compare the test piece to the stile, and if the bottom of the tenon is still too low, make a micro adjustment up until it clears the top part of the groove. Now start cutting the tenons for your remaining production rails. Same way with the side label bottom facing down. Once you cut one tenon, spin the rail 180 degrees while keeping the bottom side facing down. Now I flip all the laid out pieces over and repeat the process for the top side of the tenons. Or dry fitted. Once I go through and get everything dry fitted, everything's fitting perfect. There's, you know, certain couple things you need to go through before doing that. It's just gonna be just a rule of thumb to where you're not gonna have to sand any kind of tight spaces or anything. I went through and just did a clear out, you know, with just a very thin screwdriver, or if you have a chisel small enough that'll go down the length of this groove, and then anything on the tops and the corners. If you want to just take, usually with any of my corners, I usually don't, if I don't do any kind of round over or anything like that, I still just will run just a light sanding on the very corners just to be able to get any of those sharp pieces, just in case there's anything to splinter off. If you want to be able to sand all these pieces that are going to be very hard to sand once you glue up everything. So I left everything else not sanded or anything just because I wanted to be able to check all my joints whenever I'm going around and I'm finishing up. I want to be able to sand all that stuff down after it's all connected. But these pieces, they're going to be much harder to be able to sand after the fact. So I want to go ahead and run through and sand and make sure all this is cleared out. And it's going to make a huge difference on your glue joints. If there's any kind of material or anything left or any kind of rough cuts in that groove. So you want to be able to clear all that out. I don't think it's really necessary to run sand, you know, any kind of sandpaper all the way through it, but if you want to do that, that's fine too. But because pretty much once this panel is in, if you had to do any kind of staining or anything to match the other wood or anything like that, in this case, I can't go through and sand because it's gonna mess up my stain on the actual recessed panel itself. So I don't want to have to touch this again other than the very final step where I'm actually applying the top coat.